Tacos are a big deal at my house because we eat them all the time. My daughter loves ground beef tacos, you know, the tomatoey on the mild side with the crispy shells. My husband loves carnitas with tons of cilantro and scallions. And my favorite taco is a weird one. It's a salmon taco with a collard green slaw. I know, it's not an authentic taco, but it is delicious and fun if you're having people over because it's kind of fresh and healthy and feels new. And I love serving it with a lemon lime ice, a little tequila for the adults. And we're gonna get started making the ice because it takes about 2.5 hours in the freezer to freeze before you can grind it into kind of a dessert or an appetizer, depending on the weather. All right, so to get started, we're gonna zest some limes. Now this whole menu uses a ton of lime juice, so I'm gonna get all that lime juice and zest at the beginning so that we can add it as we go along. So I'm just gonna use a microplane zester here. And we only need about 1/4 teaspoon of the zest. Believe it or not, this is going in that collard green slaw that's going on the taco. And again, I'm just taking that zest on the outside. I'm not getting any of that white pith. That white pith is pretty bitter tasting and not what you really want in the coleslaw. You only need about 1/4 teaspoon of zest. Set that aside. Now the fun part, we're gonna make a ton of lime juice. You know, for most days, if I just need a little juice, I use one of these, just a simple citrus press. But if you need a lot of juice, I pull out the big guns. I bought this for my daughter actually because she loves to make lemonade. This thing is not very expensive, but very helpful if you need to make a lot of juice. So I'm guessing I'm gonna need about 4 limes. You see how I'm rolling it? That just helps break open the pulp on the inside so that you get a bit more juice out of it. And if it's in the winter time and everything's cold, pop them in a warm oven for a little bit. Again, just helps the juice flow a bit better. All right, so here we go. I like to get every drop of juice out. It needs to look like that at the end. It needs to be desiccated on the inside. All right, let's see how much we've got here. Now we need a total of 3/4 of a cup. Now about 1/4 cup of that is for the tacos and the rest is for the lemon lime ice. So I have a little measuring cup here. All right. All right, that's for tacos, set that aside. Now we need 1/2 cup for the lemon lime ice. Perfect, 1/2 cup. All right, this goes in a big measuring cup. These go in the sink because I love how it makes the disposal smell. On to the lemons, we need 1/2 cup of lemon juice. I'm guessing that's about 3 lemons, thereabout. These lemons look good and juicy. All right, okay. Love this thing because it spins both ways and it really reams out the lemons and limes perfectly. All right, let's see where we're at here. Perfect. All right, so that was 1/2 cup of lime juice, 1/2 cup of lemon juice. Got 1/2 lemon left over, save that for later. Now we're gonna add a little bit of sugar, a cup of sugar. I guess it's not a little bit of sugar. I mean, it is an ice, which is kind of a dessert thing anyway. A cup of granulated sugar, pinch of salt. Last but not least, I'm gonna add some water to this. We need 2¼ cups of water, and I'm gonna be fussy. I'm using spring water. Now you can use filtered water, but don't just use water from the tap because any of those off flavors will definitely show up in the final ice. So, 2¼ cups of water. There's 2 cups. Another 1/4 cup. All right. There we go. And that's it. That's everything you need to make a lemon lime ice. Now, I mentioned, if you were listening, I was gonna add a little tequila for the adults. But because I make this for large groups and it makes a good amount of ice, I like to make 1/2 of it without the tequila, just in case some folks or the kids don't want it. The tequila also does change the texture of the final ice. It makes it finer, which is really nice. Some people also use vodka because it has less of a flavor, but creates that final texture. All right, so I'm just dissolving all that sugar and the salt. Oh, it smells good. All right, there's lots of ways to make ice. Now, you can pour it in a bowl and you can stir it constantly, which is not my idea of fun. Or you can use ice cube trays, which is my idea of fun, because you can leave them in the refrigerator for days and then you just make as much as you want to in the food processor. Now, I know this, this is a pretty cool thing. This is an ice cube tray with a lid on it, and it doesn't spill things as much. And even if it's on its side in the freezer, it doesn't spill all over. So these are my preferred ice cube trays. Now I'm just gonna fill them very carefully. And once you get the hang of making these ices, it's so easy to make them any flavor you want. Lemon ice is always an obvious one. Lemon strawberry ice is fun. And if you like the idea of putting some liquor in it, Grand Marnier, peach schnapps, they all are fun in ice. And you can add herbs. You can make a lemon lavender ice if you like. Lots of options. All right, so those are the ones without the tequila. Now for the tequila. You only really need about a tablespoon or two, about 2 tablespoons for the full batch. This is about half a batch. So I'm gonna add just that and that for good luck. And whisk that in. And here are the tequila ice. One thing I found out the hard way is that you should totally mark which ones have the tequila in it because it's really hard to tell otherwise. So I've learned to put just a sticker on the ones with the tequila. Sometimes I write a T on there just as a reminder. T. All right. So these go in the freezer. And again, you need to freeze these for at least 2.5 hours, but they store easily for up to 5 days. After that, they start to pick up some of the off flavors of the freezer. So best use basically within a week.
Love our in-depth reviews? Get the latest from our reviews team delivered straight to your inbox. Our well-equipped cook newsletter provides top product picks, no-nonsense buying guides, and must-try recipes. No extra fluff, just the smartest ways to shop, save, and cook. Sign up for free now at americastestkitchen.com/newsletter.
So that lemon lime ice is safely tucked away in the freezer, and it's time to turn our attention to the tacos. Now I'm going to start by making a quick sauce that is really nice to drizzle over the top. And I'm going to use this mini food processor, which is my favorite gadget, really inexpensive, great for making things like this. And so we're going to use half an avocado. I'm going to add it right to the food processor. All right, this is my trash bowl. Always good to have a trash bowl when you're cooking just to help keep your work surface clean. I know, I'm a dork. But we're gonna add just a little bit of yogurt. Now, about a tablespoon of yogurt. It just adds a nice creaminess because crema, is usually based on cream. But this adds a tanginess I like. And again, this recipe was developed with superfoods in mind, so that might make some sense why this crema is the way it is. I'm gonna add some cilantro. Obviously, I've washed the cilantro already. I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup. Now, I always use the cilantro stems because they have just the same amount of flavor as the leaves. In fact, I think the stems of cilantro are a bit sweeter. Not the same with parsley, just cilantro. But in this, I like the sauce to be on the smooth side, so I'm gonna get rid of them just for the sauce. And I'm gonna give them a quick chop before we put it in the food processor, just to help those processor. It's a lot like a processor, but it's plausible. All right, so it's about 1/4 cup of cilantro. And add a little salt and pepper. Okay. A little bit of lime juice to help the blades go around, about a tablespoon. Last but not least, some water. Since I have the bottle of water out, I might as well use it for this too, you know what I'm saying? All right, 3 tablespoons of water. That should be good. You might need to adjust that water and lime amount just to suit yourself, or if you use thick yogurt like I did, you might need a little more water to make a sauce. This stuff actually tastes good on all sorts of things. I make something very similar to this when I make chili, but I use sour cream and tons of cilantro and scallions and lime juice, and on chili it is amazing. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Oh, this really does make the taco. Don't skip this part. All right, let's set this aside for now. And you can actually make this a day in advance, and it doesn't change color much, thanks, I think, to all that lime juice and the yogurt. So set that aside for later. Now let's move on to the weirdest part of this recipe, which is the slaw on top, which is based, as I mentioned before, on collard greens. Now, before this recipe, I'd never eaten raw collard greens. I've always had them really cooked for a long time, often with a ham hock or some bacon. So this was kind of a revelation to me, and I fell in love with eating raw collards. So here we have about 4 ounces of collard greens. You want about 2 cups chopped. You know, the stem in the middle, it's really tough and it doesn't taste very good. It tastes kind of bitter. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim the collard greens away from the stem. This is trash. A couple ways you can trim that out. You can hold it up like I just did. I do this because it's fun, but Another way to do it is you can lie it down flat. You can fold the leaf over in half, and that just exposes that tough part of the collard greens, and you can cut down on either side. That seems safer, right? Especially if you're doing this for the first time. Fold it over, cut it out. And there we go. Now I've washed these leaves already, and I'm just gonna chop them up into nice shreds, you know, like a slaw. So half leaves are good. If the leaves are big, I'll cut them lengthwise again to make them not so wide. Now that we have these long shreds, we're just gonna chop them crosswise into nice fine shreds that you can sprinkle over the taco. And you know, knife work like this is my favorite part of cooking. There's only one way to learn how to cut fast, and that is experience, doing it over and over. All right, we have to make the dressing for the slaw. And luckily the dressing is lime juice. Yep, that's why I squeezed all those limes earlier. And a little bit of lime zest, right? That I took off the limes before I squeezed them. And salt. So it's a really minimal dressing here. No oil. You notice a lot of slaws have mayonnaise or olive oil or something. Not with this, because the salmon is so rich, you actually like the drier, more acidic slaw on top. All right, so into the bowl go the collards. Now we're gonna add a couple other vegetables. Jicama. Jicama, I cut up a lot of jicama at Canyon Ranch, let me tell you. And it's delicious. It's delicious in salads. It's delicious crisp on its own with a little hummus or in this slaw. So when you buy jicama, it has a lot of wax on this outside. That's just to help preserve it in the supermarket. It's hard to peel that off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a knife and just cut it off. So cut off the ends, and then, you know, just using the curve of the jicama, I'm just gonna curve my knife around and just trim off all that wax and that outside skin. It's a very thick skin, kind of like a turnip or maybe a celery root. There we go. I'm gonna cut this into very thin matchsticks. And so I want them to be about that long, you know, so they can fit onto a taco. And the way you make matchsticks is first you make planks. You make the planks about as thick as you want the matchsticks to be, all the way to the end. Oh, jicama is so good. It's like a cross between a Granny Smith apple and a sweet pea. So it has that texture of an apple, but the flavor of a good, clean spring sweet pea. All right, so now with a plank, you just cut it in the other direction into matchsticks. These are a little big. You can make them as big or as thin as you want. Again, I'm having fun by going fast. Probably because someone's watching. It's more fun to cut fast when someone's watching you. It's like a little show off. Into the bowl that goes. I'm gonna use my bench scraper. If you don't have a bench scraper, time to invest. These things are less than 20 bucks. And they just make it so easy to move food around the kitchen, or if you're chopping onions here and you need to go to the stove, it just makes it really seamless. All right, next up, we're gonna do half of a red onion. We're gonna slice the red onion thin. And I'm fussy about how I slice my onion. I know, shocker, right? I like slicing it pole to pole. That means with the grain, so you get nice small arcs. If you slice it the other way, you get those rainbows. And those to me are a little stringy. I'm not a big fan. So to make the pole to pole cut, you basically angle your knife with the shape of the onion. I'll slow down. This hand is important, right? The claw. When I get about halfway through, I generally tip it over just to make it a bit easier for the second side. And it also leaves you with this middle part. And it's kind of a game. How many slices can I get before that collapses? Ooh, that was good. All right, so that's half a red onion. Next, we're gonna add some radishes. Nice peppery flavor, beautiful color. You can see this is unlike any other slaw that you've probably seen on a taco, but man, is it good. In fact, I just make this slaw sometimes just to have on the side of any grilled meat or fish, because it's refreshing, it's colorful, it's playful, and if you have people over for dinner, it's just so unusual. It's like it's a good conversation. All right, so For the radishes, you can do a lot of different things. I actually like just doing half moons. I like a big bunch of radish, but not everyone's a radish lover. My husband Ian is not a radish lover at all. So for him, and if I'm serving company, I usually make them a lot smaller. So not quite matchsticks, because I like the color. You only need about 4 radishes, which is only about half a bunch. And remember, when it comes to having good knife skills, well, a couple things important. One, have a good knife that fits your hand and make sure it's sharp. And the second is just get in the kitchen and cook. The only way to get good knife skills is to keep on cutting stuff up. So practice makes perfect. All right, so that's 4 radishes. Recipe says to cut them into matchsticks, but like I said, I like them in bigger, more recognizable pieces. Last but not least, some more cilantro. About 1/4 cup or so. This time I'm going to leave the stems on. All right. Took that down pretty fine because I really like that flavor throughout the slaw. Generally against making grass clippings, but here it makes sense to have it minced pretty finely. All right, so there we go in the bowl. I know I'm using my hands. You could use tongs. I have tongs right here. But I wind up just getting my hands into the food just because I like how it feels. I like to feel whether everything's coated or not. And now we can move on to the salmon. Now, salmon in a taco. We got to give it a little bit of flavor because plain salmon would be kind of boring. But luckily this recipe makes it really easy. You can use wild or farm-raised salmon. I love wild salmon. I like its strong flavor. I like that it's leaner, but I also love the consistency of a farm-raised salmon that's done in a responsible way. So for me, you can't go wrong either way. Now for this recipe, it doesn't really matter how many pieces of salmon you have, how big they are, because we're just gonna break it up and put it into tacos. But what you want is to have about 1.5 pounds of salmon. That way you can make 12 tacos. And to give it some flavor, I'm just gonna add some chili powder. It has everything you need. It has a little cayenne, has the cumin, has the coriander, and just 1.5 teaspoons is plenty for all the salmon. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt, obviously. About 3/4 teaspoon, and yes, I do measure this because sometimes I get a little carried away with the salt and things get a little salty, so I've learned over the years to measure the salt, which is not a habit. It's kind of something you have to learn if you're developing recipes. All right, last but not least, some pepper. You want to use about 1/4 teaspoon pepper. I put a little more here because my mother, Marta's Oma, loves black pepper. In fact, she goes to a special store to buy special pepper, and she sends it to me in the mail because she swears it's the best. And that's it in that grinder. Hi, Oma. We're just going to sprinkle it right onto the salmon. Notice I'm using a rimmed baking sheet. It just helps me contain the mess a bit. Anything I can do to help contain my mess is well appreciated. Wiping up all the excess spices from the tray, and you just want to get that all nicely covered with spice. All right, I'm going to wash my hands and we can get cooking. So now it is time to cook the salmon. I'm just going to use a nonstick skillet because, well, I don't want the salmon to stick. This is a 12-inch skillet. Here I have just 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil, and I'm heating it up over medium-high heat. Now, while I'm cooking the salmon, I'm also going to toast some tortillas. I like using corn tortillas. I mean, it's traditional, right? But flour tortillas also work well here. And this is how I like to toast tortillas. Now, do you have one of these things? They're really, really silly. They cost less than $5. It's a tortilla warmer, and they work really well. So after I toast the tortillas, I'm going to snuggle them in here, and this will just keep the tortillas warm for, well, at least half an hour. I see that oil starting to shimmer. The pan's looking hot, so now I'm going to start the salmon, the skin side up, so that the spices hit that hot oil. And one thing I learned after the first time you make this is that the salmon gets really dark. It almost gets charred, and it looks like you're screwing up, but that charred spice flavor is delicious in the taco. So get a little char is okay. And the salmon cooks about 3 to 5 minutes on each side. And as always, I'm going to temp it to make sure it's cooked all the way through. The temperature for salmon, and this is farm raised, should be about 120 to 125. I'm going to turn the hood on because I have the most sensitive smoke alarm in the history of smoke alarms. And the whole neighborhood knows when I'm cooking because my house is blaring. All right, so now for the tortillas. To toast them, I'm going to do it right on the burner. And this works if you have a gas stove. Obviously, if you have a glass stove, it won't work, or an induction. You would just simply do them in a pan. But if you have the opportunity to toast your tortillas over a live fire, do it, especially a campfire, because that flame, that char adds serious flavor. And that's good. See how that's just charred around the outside, a little bit spotty? That's what we're looking for. And here you can see that salmon. See how it's starting to burn and char a little bit? That's good. That char is good flavor. A couple more minutes on that side. Oh, yes! That's what you're looking for on a tortilla. Into the tortilla warmer it goes. On go some more tortillas. Sometimes, if I'm not cooking salmon, if I'm making a different kind of taco, I'll just get all the burners ripping and stand here like a short order cook, and that's fun, just flipping tortillas. Makes me feel cool. Ooh, that's perfect. So it's not burnt, it's just got a little bit of blackened char. I'm gonna flip those over, cook them on the second side. Depending on your stove, you might wanna turn it down when you cook on the second side just to prevent too much smoke. But I have to say that skin on the salmon, it gets super crisp. You're not supposed to put it in the taco. Some people don't like it. I love it. I think it's like seafood bacon. So I like getting that skin side really crisp. Let's take a look at that salmon, see where we're at. All right, so that salmon is done. Oh, look at that crisp skin. Now, if you don't have an instant read thermometer, another way you can check is just to break it open. Because again, we're gonna crumble this fish up into large chunks for tacos anyway. And you can see, cooked on the outside, little bit of pink in the middle, that's perfect. So the tortillas are warm, snug as a bug in their little sleeping bag, and the salmon just needs to rest for a couple minutes before we can break it up, assemble those tacos, and then also make that ice.
Are you ready to take your cooking to the next level?
Introducing the complete America's Test Kitchen TV show cookbook.
Featuring every recipe from every episode of America's Test Kitchen. That's thousands of recipes. That texture is unbelievable. Reviews
Gadgets you didn't know you needed.
and tips.
Yes, there's some terrible choices, but there are also some amazing choices.
We've spilled all of our secrets and included our insider notes alongside each recipe.
Plus, there's a handy shopping guide so you know exactly what to grab when you're at the store.
And of course, it makes an excellent gift. Get your copy today at americastestkitchen.com.
Salmon's rested and it's time to make tacos. Now the first thing you want to do is take 2 dinner forks. We're just going to pull apart the salmon meat. You just want to break it into large chunks. I don't want to make cat food here. You know, you want to know that it's recognizable salmon. So each of these pieces of salmon will make about 3 tacos. And like I said, the skin is so good. Now, I might put a few of the pieces of skin in my tacos. Not everyone's a fan. It's like bacon. Love it. All right, so now to make a nice big platter. This platter my husband bought because he loved it with the copper and the white. It's really hard to figure out what to put on here because it's so darn big. And we discovered it's perfect for tacos, especially if you're having a party, or as you like to say here in Boston, a patty. Try not to touch the food after it's cooked too much, especially if you're having people over. Just sanitary. I'm a big taco overstuffer, have been my whole life. But making a good taco that you can pick up easily and not make a mess when you eat it requires fewer toppings and a little restraint on my end. Now I'm gonna put the slaw and the dressing on. Now I'm gonna put this dressing on twice. I like to get it right on the salmon, but I also like to put it on top of the taco too. The crema, that lovely green color, and the slaw. Truth be told, my daughter, she's 12, not a big fan of the salmon tacos. My husband, Ian, he sold fish for many years down in the seaport. And it's hard to get him to eat salmon sometimes too, I have to say. He overdid it on the salmon smell, I think, when he was working for all those years. And so salmon can be a hard sell on him. But my dear friend Greer, who was my roommate in culinary school, and I was in her wedding, she was in my wedding, and she lives down the road. She and I can eat all of these in one sitting. I mean, this is our kind of food. It's healthy, it's fun. And then a little bit of crema on top. Right, isn't this fun if you were having just some people over on a casual weekend and it was nice out and you came out with a big thing like this, salmon tacos? All right, I like to sprinkle a few limes on the platter because I like fresh limes on tacos. And last but not least, hot sauce. I love hot sauce. And I try all different hot sauces. I bought 2 new ones today. And I'll probably put, I've tried them both. They're both good. They're both different. I'm going to put, ooh, that one got a lot of hot sauce. Did you see that? That's going to be a spicy one. And then I'm going to do half on that one. And on this side, I'm going to do this other one. Have a little hot sauce tasting. I love doing that sort of thing, having taste tests at home with different brands of things like hot sauces that you find in the supermarket. I mean, how else are you going to know how they all taste? Oh, those look good. All right, now I'm going to set those aside for a second and whip up some of that lemon lime ice, maybe the stuff with tequila, you know, for me and Greer. Now the trick is, it's ice, right? So it melts really fast. And we're gonna blend those cubes up in the food processor to make that nice slushy consistency. But to help keep things cold, I put the bowl of the food processor and the blade in the freezer. So let me get those. All right, nice and cold. So now I'm gonna pop those ice cubes out right into the food processor. They're not like ice cubes, they're like sticky ice cubes. That's perfect. All right. And now this gets a little loud. It's like making a margarita, right? It gets a little loud, but it's so worth it. So bear with me as I pulse this to a nice icy consistency. Oh, that is perfect. And again, this is classically a dessert. You know, you think lemon ice, it would be a dessert. But I find in the summer, if it's really hot, it is a lovely appetizer, or just to serve it with the meal. Just cools everybody down. If you're so inclined, you could do a little topper or floater, as they call it. Just pour a little tequila or something over the top, if you should so desire. All right, that's 2 big glasses. I don't know why I got 4 glasses. It's just me and Greer. And there you have it. Lemon lime tequila ice and tacos. Come here, you. That was a big bite, but it's so good because I wanted to taste all those flavors. A little ice to wash it down. It has such a good texture. It's like snow, but it's lemon lime tequila snow, a little tequila wink at the end. Well, that's it for me. Killer salmon tacos and lime tequila ice. See you next time. Thanks for watching. What'd you think? Leave a comment below and let me know what you're excited to cook this week. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. You can get today's recipes and more for free at our website, americastestkitchen.com/JuliaAtHome. If you're ready to take your cooking to the next level, head over to americastestkitchen.com and get a free trial of our ATK Essential membership. While you're there, you can sign up for our free email newsletters and download our app. So, what are you waiting for?